Hello and welcome to the Broadcast Newswrap, keeping you across the biggest news in the world of TV. Last week, the Dyson inquiry found Martin Bashir guilty of forging documents to gain access to Princess Diana for his explosive 1995 Panorama interview. I'm joined by broadcast BBC reporter Max Goldbart, who gets into the weeds of the scandal and offers insights into the long-term impacts on the corporation. Later on in the podcast, I catch up with We Are Lady Parts creator Nida Manzoor. All that, plus a little bit of what we've been watching on this week's Broadcast Newswrap. So welcome, Max. How have you been?
Yeah, great, thanks. Glad to be here as ever. I'm really good. The sun is shining through the window to my right. So
the sun is shining.
Yeah,
I've moved location just to be nearer to the window.
Yeah. How are your plants?
Yeah, plants are doing pretty well. I think they've also enjoyed a bit of sunshine today. They're looking a bit perkier.
It's crucial weather for the plants. But it has been rubbish all of May, so maybe it's starting to get better now. That's good.
I think the world owes us it.
It does. It really does, doesn't it?
Well, Max, so it's been a bit of a big week for you. You've been pretty busy. It's been a bit of a whirlwind with all the Martin Bashir fallout. I wondered quickly if you could kind of summarise if you thought the fallout that happened was expected or it was a bit out of the blue.
Yeah. Good question. I think most people are familiar with what has happened, and it's something that's kind of cropped up in the news on and off for the past 20 years or so. I think one thing that maybe isn't getting remembered so well at the moment is that, like, all of these allegations have been made. They've been brought up by the tabloids at various points. There was an attempted freedom of information request in 2007 that was denied by the people at the top of the BBC back then, which campaigners believe would have unearthed this, obviously almost 15 years before the Dyson report from last week. So it's been quite frequently cropped up. But I have been surprised at the depth of feeling and the level of which this has dominated the news cycle. So I think that's calmed down a bit. We're recording on Thursday, the 27th of May. Dominic Cummings did his thing yesterday, so that was always going to knock this like clean off the park. But over the weekend, all of the front pages of the main newspapers were devoting space to this scandal. On Friday as well, and then earlier into this week, and a lot of that is about what the princes said, Harry and William, famously. A lot of that is about what's coming next, and a lot of that is about some comments from some very senior politicians pertaining to failings at the BBC. But I didn't think it would occupy column inches in the way it has. But what did you make of it anyway? Like seeing the BBC being splashed across all the front pages. Like, I suppose, did you expect that it would garner this amount of media interest?
I think it's one of those times where it's like anything connected to Diana is just explosive in the British press. So I think from that aspect,
I think that's where I was a bit naive. It's almost like, I suppose my attitude was prior to what Prince William said. But if you've got Prince William, like, quite implicitly accusing the BBC of contributing to his mum's death, which is probably the biggest news story of our like generation of the past like 3 or 4 decades, then it's really no surprise that it was absolutely everywhere. So this all came about 6 months ago. Princess Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, kind of restarted this battle to get the truth from the interview from 1996 and the deceptive means by which Martin Bashir secured that interview. And Tim Davie had only just started as Director General, and I sort of thought that he might just try and bat it away almost, but he didn't. He was very plain about the need for a report, and I might come on to this later, but I think Tim Davie's response this week has been good and has been roundly praised. But when he commissioned that report, I again didn't expect it would be such a big deal. And then last week that was leaked to the Telegraph a few hours before it was published, and there's just been this enormous frenzy. And I think there's been quite a lot of misinformation floating around, some misunderstandings. But there are clearly some other questions that need to be answered going forwards. It's not just going away. And yeah, this is a really, really big test for the leadership of Tim Davie and the new chair as well, Richard Sharp, who started even more recently than Tim.
Yeah, so what's the kind of crux of the issue now that the BBC is facing? Kind of that was last week. What is kind of next steps?
So there are a few actions that have already been taken. So clearly this took place such a long time ago, nearly 25 years ago. It's something that the BBC has very easily been able to say, our editorial practices, our governance, our regulation have been overhauled since that interview took place. Just as one example, there used to be this thing called the BBC Trust, which kind of marked its own homework in a sense. That BBC Trust has been kind of damned to history as something that was far too internal and was far too much of an example of an organisation marking its own homework. And now Ofcom is the regulator of the BBC, and Ofcom is a totally separate thing to the BBC. So the idea is that this shouldn't have ever been allowed to happen, but it wouldn't have happened if Martin Bashir had been trying to do this today. So the BBC has been able to bat that away quite quickly, but there are other questions that need to be answered. There's a independent inquiry has been launched by 3 members of the BBC board. These aren't people employed by the BBC, but they sit on what's called like a unitary board, which is mostly made up of non-executive directors. So that's being led by a guy called Nick Sirota. That should report back in September. And then next year is the midterm charter review. So that's when the government looks into these areas like governance, regulation, etc., and sees if they're fit for purpose. So the midterm charter review can't examine the really big things. It won't set the BBC's funding model. It won't set out if the BBC's mission is going to change in any way, but it can look at exactly this sort of thing, governance and regulation. I think the BBC's worry is that the government will use that midterm charter review to try and install what's being called like an independent editorial board. And I was writing about this earlier this week. That board could be formed within the next couple of years because this midterm charter review is in place. And that would basically mean like a team of people who have absolutely nothing to do with the BBC overlooking the BBC's journalism and making sure it remains in check. So that's something that could actually probably won't happen relatively soon. I would say the likelihood is quite low, but that is a thing that can happen. So these 2 reviews are gonna both be taking place over the next couple of years. But in the next couple of days, we should be hearing back about why Martin Bashir was allowed to be rehired in 2016. I think that's a really big question for the BBC to answer, and one that it's going to find it difficult to answer. So in another roundly praised move by Tim Davie, he's ordered an even quicker review into why Bashir was rehired. And the more you look into it, the more it stinks a little bit. Like Martin Bashir left the BBC in 2000. Channel 4 revealed a few weeks ago that somebody from the BBC then contacted his new employer, ITV, to complain about his conduct. And that was back in 2000. And he was also, something that I completely missed was that Martin Bashir was also fired by MSNBC for making some really, really nasty comments about Sarah Palin, of all people. That was in 2013. So the idea that 3 years after that, he was rehired by the BBC is definitely a problem. So a politician, Julian Knight, in the Commons the other day was saying that the BBC's head of news gathering at the time, Jonathan Munro, welcomed Bashir's reappointment with excitement. Apparently there wasn't really much of an interview process. So it's kind of like this guy who had, by deceptive means, achieved this Diana interview, which was his crown and glory. That Diana interview subsequently had a botched investigation. And then Bashir had gone on to have serious conduct issues over a period of 15 years. Why he was allowed to be rehired is a big question, and one that the public should know about next week, if Tim Davie is to be believed.
Yeah, and what do you anticipate the findings of that report to be?
I have actually no idea. Like, I think it could almost land the BBC back on the front pages. Like at the moment, it's being led by a guy called Ken Macquarie, who is about to leave the BBC. Actually, he's head of nations and regions, but he's sort of digging through old HR records and looking for like evidence of interviews at the time. But I think if it's found that there wasn't really an interview process, this could bring the story back to the front almost. I think it could be a little bit of an issue for the BBC. But again, it's something, fair play, they're addressing head on.
I think Tim Davie has come out quick and has seemed like he's on top of everything. Like it's installed quite a lot of confidence. And obviously, if this had come out while Tony Hall was still in, it would have been a completely different matter. But I think because the timing of Tim Davie now being in place, it feels like the crisis can be a bit more managed.
Definitely. The cynic would say it's almost good for him, isn't it? It's like he's been in post a few months. He has an opportunity to completely break with the past, but he does not have to take any of this responsibility. He didn't work for the BBC in the mid-90s. I mean, Tony Hall has just had to resign from his new job, which is absolutely nothing to do with broadcasting. He was the chair of the National Gallery, but clearly felt the depth of feeling around this is so strong that he couldn't even continue doing that post. So yeah, you're right. Like, had this happened a year ago, I think he'd already announced he was leaving a year ago, but he'd certainly have had to leave straight away. Or had this happened 2 years ago, that would have been the end of him. He'd have had to resign within probably a matter of hours.
The timing of this whole situation isn't great for the BBC. I don't know if you could kind of speak to that a bit more.
Yeah, I think the timing of something like this is never going to be good, but is particularly bad now. But mainly because of we've got that midterm charter review coming up. But even before then, the setting of the license fee for the next 5 years is being decided upon. And although I did stress earlier, and the main politicians in the DCMS are at pains to stress that none of this is going to affect the license fee, the fact is the BBC is still plastered over all the front pages with dreadfully negative headlines, and again is being called out by the royals. So in that way, the timing is bad. The timing is also bad because the BBC News team is undergoing a really significant restructure, and hundreds of people are losing their jobs. And a whole bunch of them are about to have to move out of London. So there's the across the UK plan is going to be enacted early next year. So this is huge change for the BBC's news divisions. They're moving as well from what's called a programme-led to a theme-led structure, and hence lots of people are losing their roles. And I was speaking for a piece to a couple of quite senior people who work within the BBC News teams who manage people, and they said morale is really low at the moment.
I mean, watching it play out, it was such a long time ago, and you're thinking you would feel sad if it was kind of your department getting a lot of flack for something that happened so long ago, when you think these things must be happening. It's kind of like thinking back to like News of the World style. It wasn't on the same kind of caliber.
I think if you put yourself in the shoes of a senior BBC News journalist or editor, it just feels a little bit like the axe is falling upon them, like they're being blamed. Absolutely nothing to do with. I'm sure the vast majority of them weren't employed by the BBC 25 years ago. And I think there is a concern from them that future investigative journalism that the BBC does is under threat. This is impacting their ability to do their job in the way that they would like to. And so again, really poor bit of timing in that regards. And I'm sure they are very much looking forward to this dipping off the agenda a little bit. Third terrible element to the timing was a much less picked up piece of news that came out last week, but again is nonetheless, like, in a way more impactful for the BBC's future, which was a really damning report from the Public Accounts Committee about the place that the BBC finds itself in at the moment. So that report, it's odd because I watched a few weeks ago, I watched the session for which Tim Davie was speaking to the Public Accounts Committee, and they normally get a bit of a grilling, but it seemed to be going quite well for him. And he was with Charlotte Moore, and he was with the chief financial officer of the BBC. But this report, which came out basically like an hour after the Lord Dyson report into Bashir, is critical of everything the BBC is doing at the moment. It's giving an absolute hammering. So the Nations and Regions plan, the Across the UK plan that I referenced, was branded contradictory and muddled. And the committee basically had to go at the BBC for firing a bunch of people with the left hand and then saying they're going to hire a bunch of people with the right, and asked for things to be made much clearer. But even stuff like Tim Davie wants to increase commercial returns by 30% for the BBC over the next 5 years. And that, even that target was hammered as not being enough. The BBC was criticised for ducking the hard choices over cuts to content, and in all of these areas, it was told that it has to provide more information or give more to the committee. So it's, I think, in a way, once the Bashir fallout calms down a bit, this might be seen as a little bit more of a problem. There's loads of stuff here that the BBC needs to address. I think there's a big battle ahead.
Earlier this month, I spoke to We Are Lady Parts creator Nida Manzoor for this month's broadcast cover story. We chatted about her Jackie Chan obsession, being part of a new generation of diverse talent, and her next projects.
I'm, a big action fan, so I'm quite excited about making an action movie. Genre for me is fun. That's why playing in the Doctor Who world was so fun, and like looking at sci-fi and those kinds of using sort of big genre to tell maybe smaller stories of sort of underrepresented sort of groups where, which I'm part of. So that's what kind of excites me. And the thing is, comedy is always something I love. So I'm always looking to do more comedy, write more comedy.
What have been your main influences in terms of, you were talking about comedy, but then also action as well? Like what shows have you always watched that you were like, this is why I want to do this?
Oh my god, so many things have inspired me. On the action side, I grew up just watching lots of Jackie Chan movies and just being slightly obsessed with Jackie Chan. Like him in Rush Hour, the Rush Hour movie, they're not exactly the height of cinema, but I remember watching that when I was really young and being like, wow, this is amazing, and really falling in love with Jackie Chan, and then watching all of them in Super Cop and stuff. And in terms of comedy, I sort of grew up in a household where there was a lot of love for comedy. My dad and my mum are both very funny people and also just were really into it. So we'd always be watching Blackadder together. And my dad was a big Jim Carrey fan. So there was a lot of that randomly, that was his thing. And I think me personally, I got really excited when I was, watching Coen Brothers movies, where the rhythm of the sort of comedy was just really precise. I really got excited by sort of Edgar Wright's films and the way he uses the camera for the sort of comedy storytelling. But then I would also look to kind of older movies. So, All About Eve is one of my all-time favorite films. And I think it's just that era of American cinema where the snappiness of the dialogue is so sharp. I'm just really obsessed with dialogue, which I know cinema is a visual medium, but I really like chatty films.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Is there a lot of comedy in your household then? You were talking about your parents, so are they quite funny themselves, quite witty?
They're really funny. I don't want to say it because then my dad's going to be like, I am, aren't I? But they're both very funny and very silly. So there was just a lot of silliness growing up, and making each other laugh was kind of such a big deal, who could tell the funniest joke and stuff.
So moving on then to We Are Lady Parts. So it's obviously, it's quite different, and obviously the first time seeing some of these characters on screen for sure. And I kind of wondered, what kind of pushback did you have? What challenges did you have?
So the show was inspired in part by my own experiences and sort of people I know and people I love, and it was so exciting for me to sort of bring them to the screen. And I felt very lucky because when we took it to Channel 4, they very quickly were keen on it and were excited to make it. So the sort of way in was quite accessible because I just found the right people. I felt like I got lucky in that I found the right producers who would sort of champion me in what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it. And then, Fiona at Channel 4 very quickly was interested and kind of allowed the blap to kind of come into existence.
So in terms of the characters specifically then, how did kind of each one came about? Are they based on specific people in your own life, or are they a kind of mix of lots of different people, or is there one person you're like, that is my mate, but they're aware now that they've been based on someone?
It's really a mix of people. In there's parts of myself in some of the characters, there's some of my family members certainly that have inspired some of the characters, and friends and other artists, because I was just really excited by this sort of scene of young kind of people of color who are poets and artists and creators who are expressing the fullness of their identity in their work and really pushing against this idea that they have to be one thing. And that's really what excited me about making We Are Lady Parts. It's you can be a punk, but you can also be a feminist and a Muslim and a hijabi. There's so much that you can be, and you can't be just broken down into one sort of thing. And that's what really excited me.
Can you talk through any of the kind of highs and lows, I guess, of making the show, because this is your first series that's fully yours, and that I guess comes with quite a lot of hard work and quite a lot of challenge.
Yeah, the highs and the lows. I think it was, just the sort of slightly daunting nature of making my own show, and it was just something I kind of felt made me nervous at times, but it was also just felt really right, when you get to finally speak in your own voice and speak from your own truth. And I felt so connected to that. And that's what made it feel so joyful. It really felt like the first time for me, I was really allowed or was able to lean into what I wanted to say and explore aspects of my identity, which I didn't think I could in TV, in this kind of like a Channel 4 comedy. So it was really, for me, just really freeing in that respect. It was challenging also just because we were one of the first productions to be shooting during COVID time. So there was this question of like, how are we going to get through it? There's a sort of unknown that sort of hung over it, or could it be shut down? And so that added a kind of stress that I don't think I've quite processed yet, because we've just come out the other side of it. But, I felt so lucky because I was so supported by an incredible crew, and the producers and the production team just like handled all the COVID stuff. So I felt like I was really able to create what I wanted to create, and I don't feel like I had to compromise my vision at all. Yeah, the highs, I mean, it's just like, just getting to make the thing that I wanted to make is the highest high, and with the best people and the greatest cast, and, my crew are awesome as well. So that was brilliant.
Do you feel any pressure at all bringing the show to air? How are you feeling? Like I said, it's like going to be the first time that these characters are shown on TV, and that's a huge privilege. But I guess it comes with some pressure. I don't know how you are kind of feeling and how you manage that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like because I've spoken from a place of my own truth and my own sort of experience, I feel very confident in, representing these people that I know. What really excites me is that hopefully it will encourage more voices and more kind of creators in the space to kind of add to the plethora of what it means to be a person of color, a brown woman, a Muslim woman, and that's what's really exciting, to be part of what I feel is a kind of a new wave of artists coming through. So that's been really exciting. And because I've been quite intentional with why I've written these characters and who I've written. So for me, it just feels like such a privilege to be able to say what I want to say, in my way.
You just said it will hopefully help bring more shows like this to life. I wondered why you think the kind of comedy landscape is. Women, and again, obviously non-white women. How is that landscape? Do you feel encouraged that it's going in the right direction? Or do you still think, once in a blue moon kind of opportunities?
That's a really good question. Just from my experience and from what I've seen and what I've been inspired by, I feel like it's an exciting time, both here and in the US. I was very inspired by Issa Rae's show Insecure, and the way it just really expressed in the truthfulness her identity and her culture. And even, I Made a Story was drama, but Michaela, you can just tell she has this sort of real kind of love of comedy. The sort of humor in there is just, it's all over it. And I feel like it is an exciting time. I think it's still yet to be seen if this is just a kind of sort of one-off, or if it's going to have lasting change. And I'm hopeful.
Is there anyone else in the space that you are particularly looking on that you're admiring that are kind of coming up through the ranks at the moment?
Oh my gosh. That's a great question. Someone who has inspired me just as a sort of fellow comedy writer is Kayode Ewumi, and he's a performer. I directed his show Enterprise. So just someone who really expanded my own idea of what comedy could be, just because he's much more physical in his comedy, whereas I was like, oh, it's got to be all in the dialogue. So I'm really excited about what he does next and like how he develops in the comedy scene. Gosh, I'm inspired by all sorts, like poets and musicians that I like really love, and sort of playwrights and stuff who are coming through. But I suppose that's different. But I'd say Michaela Cole has always been someone who I look to, and she's been really kind and supportive of me as I've been making We Are Lady Parts as well, which has been nice.
Are the opportunities, do you think, a little bit better in the US, or like what do you think the split is in terms of comedy, like female comedy, and just generally like where you're looking that you feel like your career could progress better?
Because I really feel like I write kind of British comedy. But I was quite surprised when Peacock came on board to co-pro, and I didn't have to change my voice for them, which made me kind of confident or just excited that actually my worry was like, if you want to go to the States to make anything, you've got to sort of change your tone or your style to kind of work for that audience. But it's really not been the case, or my experience, at least with Peacock, they've been very supportive of what I want to do. And the kind of co-production with Channel 4 has also felt quite that the both broadcasters have been very in tune with each other. So I feel quite lucky in that. And in a way that means I don't have to choose sort of US over the UK. I feel like it's sort of both now with all these sort of SVODs and stuff. You can have a British show, but it can also, you can partner up with an American.
Was it quite scary when Peacock came on board and you were like, I thought this was just going to go out to like this many people, and now all of a sudden...
No, it was scary when Peacock came on board, less because of that, more because I was just like, oh no, these Americans, they don't know what I want to do, and actually they were brilliant and really respectful and thoughtful in their sort of feedback and note giving. So I was wrong in my assumption. So that was my main worry. I hadn't even got to the thinking of like the show actually coming out. I was just like, I need to write this, and who are these new people? But they were really great, I gotta say. I was very lucky.
And is that kind of opened up doors to having conversations with them?
At the moment it's just finishing We Are Lady Part, so we haven't had any further conversations. It's just I'm still very much in like cutting the trailer and cutting the teaser and like the posters, so it's very much still in like a kind of finishing off We Are Lady Parts. What's
left to crack? What would you like to do in terms of just like your big dream goal?
See, I'm really excited about doing kind of a big genre movie. I just love, I want to go to space at some point, I think, and just do a cool original space thing. That's the thing. I'd love to try and write something that's sort of set in space. I'm really excited about that Sky show Intergalactic. It looks so epic. That's something that excites me. I really love writing comedy, so that will always be a thing. And music comedies, especially. Maybe I'll write direct a musical. I don't know. Anything that is like big genre and fun, I think.
Do you want to physically go to space, or are you like...
I mean, ideally, you can shoot in space. That'd be taking the whole place. Yeah. No screen needed. So actually, maybe it'll work out cheaper, right? It's nice to sit down with you again after, having that first experience of being, sort of recognized at that smaller level. I feel very lucky to be able to have created a show that I feel I was really allowed to sort of speak my own truth and express myself. And I'm just excited to share that, really.
What kind of things are you being asked for? Do you still feel like there might be a pressure, I suppose, to write one type of story? Or how are you kind of managing that? Or do you feel quite empowered to write whatever you want to write, and it doesn't matter if it's about a certain community or a certain subject? Do you feel liberated?
I've definitely felt a shift, like especially since We Are Lady Parts got picked up. I feel like I'm getting really cool and really interesting offers just to direct. There's so much great stuff being made, really interesting genre feminist work. I'm so excited about Sean Robin Grace's show, HBO show, The Baby, that's going to come out. Like that, I know is going to be brilliant. So there's so much great stuff being made. I'm really excited to just kind of keep sort of finding my own voice. And I feel like I'm in a position where I'm now able to pitch original ideas with more confidence. And I'm getting a lot of cool like action stuff in, which is really fun because I love all that. But I'm still kind of at the stage now where I've just finished a big project of like wanting to just see how I feel and what I want my next move to be before I kind of commit to what could be a big chunk of time.
So moving swiftly on, Max, what have you been watching this week?
Yeah, I've almost caught up with, so I wanted to talk about Gods of Snooker, but Jesse eclipsed me last week by talking about it. I think it's been the best show of the year so far. Love that show. But instead, what I've been watching this week is the HBO drama Mayor of Easttown, which is on Sky. it's got Kate Winslet as the lead. I normally don't really like shows like that too much. It follows a very similar pattern of a crime drama taking place in like a backwater town in the US, and the lead is a cop with a past, and then another cop turns up from a different town, and there are loads of shady suspects, and it like doesn't really break from that mold. But I just think the quality of the writing is very high, and Kate Winslet's awesome, and she's got a really good American accent. So absolutely fair play. I'm looking forward to the next couple. I think there's 2 left that I need to watch.
I did think her American accent was great. I did struggle with it a little bit. I just found it quite like too moody, too like
it's
sad,
really moody. Yeah.
Too like, I don't know. I just needed a bit more.
Yeah.
Props for her accent. I'll give her that.
She gets lots of props. I do want to. I wouldn't normally enjoy something like it because like these things just follow a pattern, don't they? And once they're talking about like Kate Winslet's background, you just know exactly where everything's going. Halfway through, obviously, she has her badge taken away from her. That was just so obviously going to happen. But then she obviously carries on fighting the case. I know I'm ruining it, so hopefully no one really wants to watch it. It's only up to episode 2. But there's something a little bit different about this, which I really appreciate. And it's getting great write-ups all over the press. So clearly other people think so too, but not you, Hannah Bowler. What have you been watching? Not Mayor of Easttown.
Well, actually, I went to stay with my parents for the first time this year with the pandemic rules changing. Lovely. And they're big Sky Arts fans. So we watched hours of Sky Arts on Saturday night. Really nice content. We watched, I can't remember what it was called, but it was this really lovely 1-hour documentary about live gigs. And like it had like Noel Gallagher, it had like Frank Turner, some other people just talking about the best gig venues in the UK, and how much they'd like miss live music. So just like that, it was simple. It was really nice. So that was really nice. And like it just like there's so many different shows that you can just kind of zone in and out to. It's just quite beautiful.
Beautiful,
I would describe it as.
Are your parents happy with the free to air move, or did they
have
it
before? So pleased with the free to air move. Yeah, they'd never, because they don't have Sky, so they have never heard of Sky Arts. And now that's all they bang on about. So I watched that, and then ashamedly I've been watching the first series of Made in Chelsea from the beginning. I can't remember why I decided to put it on, but yeah, it's aged strangely, I would say, but entertaining nonetheless. Amazing. Also, I think everyone got a lot more better outfits, I'd say. The first series, they all look like they're stockbrokers, and I think it's changed a bit now.
Yeah, they're always better at the start, these reality series, I think. I want to go back and watch early Towie. It's better when they're not famous.
Yeah, totally. And this feels like a lot, although it is obviously really scripted, it feels a lot less like a drama. It feels like a reality show, which is nice. So that's what I've been watching this week.
Amazing. Sky Arts plus Made in Chelsea. You've had it all.
Well, thanks, Max. It's been really great to get your BBC Insider insight into the Martin Bashir events of the last week, and it's been nice chatting to you about bloody Mayor of Easttown. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcast Newswrap. I've been Hannah Bowler, and I've been co-hosting with Max Goldbart. A special thanks goes to Nida Manzoor, and I'd really recommend checking out her show We Are Lady Parts on Channel 4. This podcast is edited by myself, and you can check out all past 47 episodes of the pod on Spotify and iTunes, or on the website via www.broadcastnow.co.uk.